Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for stopping by the Bob Dodd Show. Today, I have one of my best friends here in Georgia visiting the studio today to hang out with us. It is my pleasure to introduce the great Andrew Sawyer. I don't know. I feel like you deserve a very big introduction. Maybe if I use like one of these voices or something. But yeah, you know.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So I got to meet Andrew how many years ago?
2017?
Yeah,
So
2017.
was it 7 years ago?
7 years ago. Yeah. I knew Andrew was an awesome dude as soon as he started showing me all the things that he has made and all the cool tools that he had and the machinery. I was like, dude, you speak my language, man. And I just like from then on, dude, I don't know, confided in you with so many different things. You know, we we started out in a small group together, and that's how we got to know one of another, and through Southside Church, you know. Andrew, give us a little short history of yourself, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a one of a kind.
And remember to speak into that mic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the typical response there would be, yeah, I was born in Arizona. I grew up kind of all over the place. Went to high school in Wisconsin. Joined the Air Force out of high school. Did a 4-year enlistment. Got out of the Air Force. Went to college. Got a degree in engineering and have been a practicing engineer since about 2009. Now, mechanical and aerospace engineering. And I'm a father of 3, married, and most importantly, a follower of Jesus.
Yes. And I think Jesus brought me to you, or you brought you to me at our, small group and in our church. I think that, I don't know, anytime I ever need advice, anytime I ever need just like to really set myself straight, I call Andrew up every once in a while, or we have a talk, and just you're so wise for such a young guy. And I feel like, when I have troubles, Andrew's like the perfect dude to go to. So I always appreciate your help.
Well,
your wisdom.
I've been through quite a few troubles myself, so my hard-won lessons can help someone else.
Yeah.
It's always a blessing, for sure.
I feel like you have a lot to offer. I wanted to introduce you to all the people out there that follow the Bob Dodd Show. I find you super interesting, and I think it's because of maybe like your mechanical mind and the way you see things and the way you view things. You're very, I don't know, you speak the language I understand a lot of times, and you break things down in layman terms for me, so it's easier to understand. Make hard things seem understandable.
Yeah, well, I'm very practically oriented.
Yeah.
I remember, and I think this is typical for most kids, is sitting in math class in elementary school thinking, how does this apply to anything that I'm ever going to do in real life at all? It doesn't make any sense. But then getting later into college and engineering classes and realizing like, oh, the reason we have to do derivatives, which I've been doing for 3 years just as an abstraction, is because, velocity, the derivative of velocity is acceleration. Now that, it actually is a real thing.
Yeah.
So I have a passion for kind of demystifying difficult to understand things that people use jargon for and stuff like that, because and getting down to the essence of it and communicating things in a way that's easy to understand, because it helps me understand them better too.
Yeah. For me, I think you're a really good communicator. It's really easy to talk jargon or talk the walk for many different industries. One of the things that people talk to me about for this podcast is like, hey, when you have your film people on, it's like, dude, you say so many different things that we don't know what that is, and you're expecting us to follow along in the podcast. And when I'm around you, and you're talking whatever it is, you make it easy for me to understand things.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons that people talk.
Yeah.
And I try to make my primary reason to help someone else understand something or to inform,
Yeah.
communicate to inform. There's a lot of other reasons. A lot of people will say a lot and they're trying to self-promote and make themselves look good or
Yeah.
make themselves look knowledgeable or, whatever the case may be. But it's all useless unless it actually helps someone, right?
Yeah. Like I like taking the, I don't want to say the dumb guy approach, but like that I'm here to learn mentality that I have a lot of times, there's people out there that know way more than me. And sometimes I just like hearing them talk. Sometimes you run into some BS and stuff like that along the way, but it's really good to know you understand something and then you can move forward to it. I can imagine like with your, engineering degrees and all the stuff that you have to do, like your current job now that you're doing, like you're getting a chance to build some really cool like machinery.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting implemented right in front of your face. What does that feel like, dude? Like because like you showed me in the CAD on one of the projects that you were working on. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like every little kid out there has a Lego set. Every little kid out there wants to build something. And when they build it and they're using it in life, it's the biggest thrill. And you're still like, you're a big kid getting to this industrial building. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, so I'm relatively lucky in that regard as far as I knew that I was going to be an engineer since I was like 3 or 4 years old. I was the kid that was taking apart McDonald's toys and figuring out how they work and then, putting them back together with a couple extra springs and,
Yeah.
but always curious about it. And my dad was attentive to that and had told me most of my life, like, you're cut out for engineering. You're going to be an engineer, so as far as where I'm at now, it's funny because I think over time, your perspective on work and career and all that stuff can go through all kinds of different shifts. And in certain seasons, it's the primary focus and it's the most important thing that you've got going on. And then there's other times where it's not.
Yeah.
And sometimes you are trying to get too much out of work. Or speaking for myself, sometimes I've gone through seasons where I'm trying to get more significance out of my work than my work can offer.
Sure. Yeah.
And then others where I see it as, a necessary evil and, but it really has a lot more to do with what's going on inside of me than what the actual job is at any given time. But as far as taking a concept and just an idea that's only in my mind and that only I am visualizing and then turning it into a real thing it's pretty cool.
I dig it. I think that once again, he showed me the blueprints of this. It's a hoist, correct?
It's an assembly fixture.
Fixture. Okay. And it holds like a real heavy piece of machinery that, I mean, just to see it, it's just like, you designed that? That's crazy to me, And when I see you talk about it, like I can see that you're, kind of proud of it, like in that, like you're taking, I don't want to say proud, but like you like what you're doing. And I think a lot of people out there in the world right now are just not really liking what they do. So,
well, it'd be quite possible for someone to do the exact same job that I do and be miserable.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, like,
it has a lot. Yeah, it has a lot to do with your perspective on things.
Yeah,
and what you're trying to get out of it, and the reason you're there, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, perspective plays a big role in everyone's lives. We were having a conversation earlier how everything starts kind of within, like whether if someone has issues, like with their perspective at their job. Like are they happy doing what they do? Probably not. Maybe, but it's all in here. How they're actually looking at it. And a thing that Richard had brought up in the podcast that he was on, shout out to Richard Faircloth. He was kind of saying the same thing about it's not about, what you think. It's about changing the perspective, like looking through something with a different lens to kind of like lend a hand to maybe figuring out some of the issues you have, And I thought that was like really, really like something to hold on to, because when you have any kind of thing that you're going through, whether if it's fixing a carburetor on a motorcycle or having to cut your grass or whatever the situation is, you could be miserable doing all of those things, or you could be happy doing it. And depending on why or when it's happening is pretty much the reason why people are fighting with anything. And I think it's really, really interesting. You give a lot of good advice. What kind of advice would you give for folks that are basically unhappy at their job?
So if you came to me and said that you were unhappy with your job, I'd probably I'd ask a lot of questions before I venture to give any advice.
Okay.
So
Sure.
like, what is it about the job
Yeah.
that is making you unhappy? What is it, why do you have this job? Why do you do this work? What's your ultimate purpose here? What are you doing? What are you working for? What are your dreams with this job? Like, how do you hope things are going to play out in the future? And, it's the answers to those questions that would help me to pinpoint where the point of friction is.
And I guess you would ask like the same questions if someone was not having problems with jobs, but having just problems with something in their life too, right? Because like you're always good at giving advice, and when you say some things that it really lands with me, like I understand it. So it's like we were talking about, once again with whatever issue is going on, it starts within, and I don't necessarily think people think to even look in. They're always looking at around them, what's happening around them. And that's why they might be experiencing whatever they're experiencing right now. It's like outside influences. Mm-hmm. Like it's good to look in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 because if the problem is within, then it's within my control. Mm-hmm. And then I can't blame anyone else for it. So that can be a challenge. It's much easier to just blame everyone else and then justify your bad behavior because it's because of whatever everyone else is doing to me and all that sort of thing. So it would, it requires a certain sense of responsibility to be willing to look within and then to admit that it's within. But that's also very empowering because if you're blaming it on something that's outside of your control, then you're out of control. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. I think people, almost like people that live with back pain, they learn to live with it. People also live out of control and they learn that these like bad behaviors or bad things that help them live out of control all the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. There in Scripture, it says that people do not know what makes them stumble. Mm-hmm. So we have a tendency to cover up the real issue with so many layers of assumptions and blame shifting and excuses and all that kind of stuff that it can be really hard sometimes to understand what the real thing is underneath it all.
Yeah. But those excuses, man, they make things real easy on me. No, I mean,
like you imagine someone gets a sliver when they're in 5th grade or something like that.
Yeah.
And they don't know about it. Well, next thing you know, it's infected. And then, so now it's infected. And the problem is that it's infected. So then they're treating the infection, which is a symptom of the real problem. And, then it heals around the splinter, but it's always causing them pain for the rest of their lives. And they have this pain and they deal with it by taking painkillers or whatever. But, the problem all along was just a splinter.
Yeah.
And if you had dealt with that, you wouldn't be dealing with these other things for your whole life.
Yeah.
And people do that for really stupid reasons.
Heck yeah. I always think about my friends and the people that we encounter every day, just like whether if it's in the film industry or the construction industry. And sometimes people tell me that I'm too easy on people or I give people too much grace or whatever. Or like, I'm like, well, I have no idea what this person's going through. I'm not here to, I'm here to drive this machinery or I'm here to drive this truck or whatever. Like whatever they got going on, if I don't know how to help them, I'm not going to make it worse for them, and and get into a predicament where I'm trying to, I don't know, argue with a person or anything like that. Because I feel like everybody needs that like moment of even if you don't like the person, give them that moment of like, hey, dude, I'm here if you need anything. That helps me out a lot, because like I never know what people's going through. And when I'm driving tractor trailer for the film industry, sometimes we'll double up, and I'm in a stake bed and we're driving along to go do a delivery or something, and somebody will cut in front of me and slam on their brakes and do all this crazy stuff. And the guy in the passenger seat's like, oh, this is crazy. This guy's doing this, doing that. And I said to him, I said, I know it looks like he did this deliberately, but like, let's just think about like, what if that guy is on the phone right now? Cause he was clearly on the phone talking to somebody about something serious, and his mind is there and his eyes are still watching. He just made a mistake. What if it's just a mistake? And the guy goes, well, yeah, he's still in the wrong though. But like, how many mistakes do you make a day? I make thousands of them a day. Are you going to get on this guy for making a mistake? Because anytime you make a mistake, I'm sure you'd appreciate it if somebody didn't get on you. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, that's called the fundamental attribution error. If you screw up, that makes you a screw up.
Yeah.
If I screw up, well, that's just, I have a reason for that, and I can explain to you it's not a normal thing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with who I am. But if you do it, you're a screw up. Yeah.
Man, I am a screw up. I mean, like people always look at me and think, Bob, you work in the film industry. That's so cool. You do this and you do that. And I feel like, it's like, well, if you realize how many times I screwed up and everything else, I just became like a car painter. Like I might screw up, but I know how to fix my screw ups.
Well, so thus far we've talked about problems and about screwing things up and mistakes.
Yeah.
And, like we were talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
What if there's a way to shift the perspective, so what if problems are actually opportunities?
Mm-hmm.
What if screw ups and mistakes are opportunities?
Yeah.
What if you had the perspective in which you welcome problems
Mm-hmm.
because it's an opportunity? Or I'll tell you, for me, that's a big piece of engineering, is understanding how things break and how things go wrong, and safety analysis and stuff like that. And that's really interesting, because if you want something to work, you have to understand how it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what goes wrong with it, and that's definitely a curiosity of mine, not just with machines and stuff, but with other people and with myself, and, with my dog and whatever I'm dealing with. I want to understand, what's the optimum performance for whatever this thing is, and then what causes it to not work optimally. But I realized that a lot of problems, everyday problems, they reveal things about me. They bring things out of me that I didn't know were in there.
Yeah.
So it's so if something, like if I get in a car crash and I'm really upset about it and whatever, because I'm late to this thing and yada, yada, as I reflect on whatever it is, I realize, I didn't realize how important being on time was to me until I got in the situation where I can't be on time and I'm really upset about it.
Yeah.
But maybe that was too important to me. And that maybe part of the problem is this thing that just got revealed that I didn't know about until this circumstance brought it out.
Yeah.
So I think problems can actually be great learning opportunities.
Yeah.
I think difficulty is the best teacher.
Yeah.
Adversity is a good teacher.
Yeah. A lot of inventors, I think, carry that same line of thinking.
And then mistakes, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
Well, you make a mistake. Well, that's because you didn't know something, and then you found out by making the mistake that, I need to be attentive to this thing.
Yeah.
Well, then you iterate and try it again with that thing in mind, and then you find out where your next knowledge gap is because that gets screwed up. But that, it's, I tell the people that I supervise at work and my own kids, it's totally okay to make mistakes. In fact, I welcome mistakes. Make as many mistakes as you want. It's not okay to not learn from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in your field, I think I don't want to say the only way you can learn is mistakes, but like sometimes when you're designing something, you kind of have to have an understanding of failure. So sometimes you, like Elon Musk, he pushes his rockets to failure all the time so they know exactly what's breaking and what's happening. This brings up something. I mean, it's going to divert the conversation to something different, but I don't know how much you know, but like when somebody is designing something and they're actually putting it through a testing phase, one of the things that I always think about is like, okay, they're going to test it until it fails. What are the steps? What's the system of like actually finding out like the different failure parts? Like, does it really come down to like maybe this part and the people who are looking for all the debris actually say it's this part and they find the part? Like, what if they don't find the part?
Well, a lot of engineering, there's codes for it, and a lot of it comes from like the military and the Department of Defense. But so there's things like failure mode analysis and failure mode and effect analysis, and that's just a paradigm for how you analyze and categorize failures in whatever system you're working on.
Yeah.
But typically when you're designing something, you want to find out what its weak point is, and then you want to design it to whatever system it is to handle a multiple of what you expect it to handle in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's called the factor of safety.
Yeah.
So, if I have a bridge and if the entire bridge is covered by 18-wheelers that are operating at their maximum capacity, it's going to be X amount of pounds. I'm going to design the bridge to handle 3 times that.
Yeah.
So even the worst possible real world scenario, it's the strength of the bridge is going to be able to handle 3 times more than that.
Yeah. Because I think of shackles and I think of like chain or, like, and for the grip world, when I was, gripping, we're always putting structures above people and everything has a weight rating. The chain has a weight rating, the pipe, the clamps, everything has a weight rating. And we know that to be true because the people who are making it, they have to design it and test it before it goes into production and being sold to people. And I just find it very interesting that same kind of thing has to happen before a building's built. They got to test the brick. They got to test the steel. They got to test the concrete.
Well, there's standards for all the materials. So they don't necessarily have to test it. They say, we're going to use this kind of concrete and it has the ultimate compressive load of this PSI or whatever. And so we're going to design the building to use this material, or, if you're designing a steel structure, what all of the tensile strengths and the buckling loads and all that stuff is. So a lot of it, you're just working off of tables and then doing the calculations for whatever particular material that you're working with. So it doesn't always require a lab. Certain materials we have a lot of experience with, especially metals and steel and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now there's new stuff that's being developed that we don't have a lot of experience with. And, so like composites and printed materials and, some of the new stuff that they're making airplanes out of, for example, we don't have long-term performance data on that new stuff. So that can be a challenge.
Airplanes always amaze me for how thin they are, and the rib structure and how much weight it can hold. It's like a pop can with wings. You know?
It kind of is. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I took my kids to this drive-through safari thing, and it was on 4th of July weekend, and they had an owl, and it was probably like 2 feet tall or 20 inches tall, pretty big owl. And the tour guide asked everybody to guess how much it weighed. And someone's like, 30 pounds, 35 pounds, 25 pounds, 20 pounds, the thing's like that big. And the lady says it's 5.5 pounds because it's designed to fly. You know? The bones are hollow. The feathers are as light as possible. It's mostly fluff. It's the same thing with airplanes.
Yeah.
But they're still heavy. Like a Boeing 747 is over 900,000 pounds.
Wow. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
How much weight can it hold? Because that always surprises me too.
Yeah, so I don't know what the empty weight is, but the max taxi weight would be like 960,000 pounds.
Okay.
But it's holding quite a lot.
Yeah. When I was a refueler back in, gosh, I forget what year. I was 17 years old, 18 years old. I was refueling airplanes for a company called ASIG. And I would put, I don't know, 600 pounds of fuel in, and it's just like, like, okay. And that's not a lot. That's just like a little bit of fuel for some of them big planes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, how many gallons, can this thing hold? And it's like 10,000 gallons or something, or what? Not 10,000.
Yeah.
Oh, I forget.
Like 80,000 pounds.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I guess I just needed to put one, like a little bit, and they're going to divert it in the wing to even stuff out. And maybe it was 6,000 pounds I put in or something like that. I forget how many gallons it was. And from that point on, I always thought like airplanes were like super interesting. I thought I was going to be a pilot one day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know, just growing up the way I did, my parents never ever said like, oh, you could just get a loan to go to school or anything like that. It was like, we don't have the money, so you're not going. It's like, I had that mentality growing up a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that, people like Richard and who are actually doing the flying of the big jets and stuff like that, they amaze me too. You were part of that world for a little while.
Yeah, well, I started my career off in the Air Force, and I joined when I was 17.
Yeah.
And, a year and a half later, after a bunch of training, I was responsible for a $150 million airplane.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool as an 18-year-old,
Very cool.
It's kind of, the military is kind of like a gang, but you're like a gang with the best equipment and the best war fighting.
Oh, there was like
stuff.
there was a YouTube short going around. It's like, I don't get it. I can do. He's like, the guy goes like, I'm in charge of so many people. I'm in charge of this rocket, that rocket. That's like, I don't know, like $150 million worth of rockets, but I'm not allowed to have a toaster in my room.
Yeah. Yeah. Drive-by shooting. Let's do fly-by.
Yeah. That's like military. I have lots of friends that are in military, and everyone always has like funny stories like that. Like, we could do this and do that, but then we are not allowed to do this, like brush your teeth over or in a certain spot or something like that. Like some crazy.
Yeah. You can't have your mustache extend past your lips.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's always stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, it's always different than you expect.
Sure.
Every career is like that. You have I'd say almost every endeavor is like that. Even, for example, like, let's say you're going to go see a new city. Let's say you've never been to New Orleans, and I tell you, let's go to New Orleans this weekend. And I tell you all about it, and you have this idea in your head about what it's going to be like. And then when you go there, it's never going to be the same as the idea you had in your head.
Sure.
And it's like that with pretty much everything you do, but particularly with careers,
Yeah.
So you get into a field because you're interested in something. And, for me, I was interested in airplanes, and I really liked fireworks when I was a kid and stuff like that. So I thought the Air Force was a great choice.
Yeah.
And I had this idea, my recruiter told me it was going to be a certain way, and it was totally different than anything that I thought it was going to be like.
At any point, did you think that you might enlist again?
No.
Yeah. I have friends now, actually like 3 friends that are retired now. And I'm like, you're retired already? He's like, yeah, dude, I did 21 years in the military.
I could have retired 3 years ago, which is crazy.
And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, what is that like, being retired at like 46 years old, 47 years old? What's that like? It's got to be wild. At the same time, they're all doing jobs for the military still as consultants or or whatever. I was like, oh, so you really didn't retire. You're just collecting that pension and doing a different job. And, that's awesome. And my buddy Rob's goes like, yeah, man, I work like 18 hours a week, have my pension, and I go scuba diving. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's really cool that you go scuba diving. It's like a nice, dangerous thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just sit there and think to myself, what would I be doing if I was retired? Probably riding motorcycles. We got to go ride again. We got to get those bikes out. It's been a while. Yeah. What would you do if you retired?
I would do a lot of volunteering.
Yeah.
For sure. I'd try to help the next generation as much as I could.
Yeah. You don't think that, you don't think Grok's going to help that for him?
I don't know. I didn't really have anybody mentor me when I was young. I didn't really have a mentor at all until I was in my 20s, but I feel like there's a lot of need for that.
Oh yeah.
And, I think we go through our experiences in our lives and we learn all our lessons, not just for us, but so that we can share them with other people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a way man, my retirement was I wanted to go sell ice cream on a beach somewhere, snow cones on the beach or something. I stole that idea off of a friend, Steve, back in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, so the way I look at it, it's very much informed by my experience thus far, so, like I said, I went straight from high school into the Air Force. And I actually joined just a few weeks before September 11th happened. So what I thought I was going to get was completely changed by that whole thing. And, so I go through training and next thing I know, I'm on active duty in a special operations wing and we're engaged in 2 wars.
Yeah.
So the whole experience is totally different than I expected it to be. But the thing about it was, my whole life was about something that was much bigger and more important than me.
Yeah.
At that time, so I was 100% committed to the mission. And that was, I eat, drink and breathe mission. And at any time, our unit motto was anytime, any place, you got your bags packed at any time, you could go to any place and you need to be prepared to do your job. And, but it was one of the core values of the Air Force is service before self. So it was always in the service of something. So it's me working together with my team and squadron and wing and all that, together on some big thing that is more important than any of us as individuals, Yeah. So then when I got out, I went straight to college, and college is like the most selfish season in life because 100% of what you do is only for yourself. No one else really cares at all about any of your grades except your parents who are paying for it. Maybe, but you're pursuing your own interests for yourself to make a career for yourself. And you're not really helping anybody because you're too busy doing your own stuff.
Sure.
And, so for me, that was like that was probably the most difficult part of the transition. I think that's probably a big piece of it for a lot of guys getting out of the military is going from living for a higher purpose to living for yourself.
Yeah.
And, and I think, that really informs the way I look at retirement. Like I'm not interested in living for myself.
Okay.
Because it's extremely boring to me. And, if I live for myself, then what's left when I die?
Yeah.
The thing that I lived for is gone. It's what's the use of that? And I think finding a mission that's greater than yourself is really important, regardless of whatever your background is.
Sure.
But thinking in terms of like self-gratification, like someday I'm just going to retire and sleep in every day and eat whatever I want and all of that. And it's going to be great. Well, try it out and you'll be bored within 2 weeks. It's not that great.
Yeah. For learning, do you think that, like I said, you're very wise, and a lot of advice that you've given me over the years, and a lot of things that we talked about over the years, you know, I feel like you've learned many lessons. Do you think that being in the military, you learned more lessons in the military, or do you think you learned more lessons in school, or did you think you learned the bulk of your wisdom when you left college? I mean, I know it's a combination of three, but like, what were the biggest lessons that you learned?
Well, I think it's more important to become the kind of person who's teachable, who can learn. You know, so I would say that the military taught me how to learn stuff more than anything else.
Yeah.
You know, and to some extent college as well. You know, I think in high school, the teacher's job is more to actually teach you, but in college, it's just to test you. So you're on your own to figure out, you have to figure out how to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, and then they're going to test whether you figured it out or not.
Sure.
You know, so you go to college to learn how to figure things out, you know, because it's a useful skill to have, knowing how to figure things out. But the same thing in the Air Force, I didn't have anybody tell me that I was good for anything before I joined the military. I did a lot of sports and stuff like that, but I was never, you know, top tier in any of the sports. And I took AP classes and stuff like that, but I didn't really get good grades because I didn't care too much about the homework because it didn't make sense to me as far as why do I have to do all this busy work? You know, I already learned it.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have any advocates telling me like, you can do more than you think, you know?
Yeah.
But then when I went to the Air Force, I got a really high score on the ASVAB, and they offered me this bonus, and I can pick whatever job I want. And next thing you know, like, I'm being told that I can do all this stuff that I didn't think I could do.
Yeah.
And then they're equipping me and sending me through training, and I finished top of my class in training or whatever. And I'm like, wow, I believed all this stuff about myself that was wrong.
Yeah.
What else am I wrong about? You know, so I think that's how you learn, is by having that attitude of humility and being willing to admit that you don't know everything, or you don't know something, or you might be wrong, or,
Yeah.
you know, whatever the case may be. So I think that really helped. That really helped me become teachable. I think it's a humbling experience in a lot of ways, going through, you know, all that training in boot camp and stuff like that. I think it's a perspective changer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think growing up, you know, I didn't have people telling me that I should go to college. So I tried a semester of community college. I disliked it, and I was like, I'm going to go do something different. So I did roofing for a long time. I got into sales for a little while, you know, and those things, I feel like I learned the most when I was doing the different sales positions that I had, because I got to learn people, and I got to learn, I feel like, who people can really be. You know, everybody has this like facade, and they walk around in this, you know, shell of a body, and have their things going on in their head and things going on in their life. And I noticed that when I do talk to people throughout all the different experiences that I have just working in all my different sales positions, people talk to me all the time, and they open up about me, like to me, and things like that. And I think that that's one of the best things about being a human, is getting to know people like for real, you know, not like the superficial, like, hey man, I see you at Top Golf every Wednesday. Yeah. Knock it out of the park, and then go. It's like when you actually get that moment where it's just you and the other person, and you have this like intimacy, and to the point where both of you have this like unsaid agreement, like I'm going to keep it real with you, and you're going to keep it real with me, or whatever. And you guys talk, and then, or whoever's talking, like I have a lot of those moments. And I think that's like one of the biggest things that I think about when I just talk to anybody at all on the podcast or they meeting them at Publix or whatever. I realize I'm pretty open and some people are real closed. And I that's probably one of my favorite things because I do learn a lot because I do talk to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people want to stay in touch with me for some reason too. Like I'll get text messages out of the blue and it's just like, oh man, like why is this guy texting me? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, sure. What's up, dude? Glad that's happening for you. And like people just want to, let me know stuff that's going on, whether if it's, good or bad or whatever. And I learned my lessons that way a lot, talking to human beings and things like that.
That's a lot better than doing it the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I'm really interested in, because with the way you just walk about life, you have a cadence to the way you present yourself and you talk. And I feel like that, it's easy to, I don't know, man, like just, it's easy to talk to you. So I think that to myself that maybe we have maybe a similar thing that happens to one, because like, I don't know, I think people would want to open up to you because you're easy to talk to and they confide in you. And I don't know, I think, I don't, do you have that happen to you often?
To some extent. I'm also an introvert,
Yeah. Well, I know that, but
yeah, I think people can see authenticity.
Yeah.
And they can see when someone's trying to project a false image and
Yeah.
look like something that they're not and stuff like that. And, it's really, it's one of those, I'd almost call it a cognitive trap that people get stuck in is, if you put too much weight on acceptance or approval, like if what you really want is for other people to accept you to the extent that you're willing to be whatever you think they want in order to be accepted, then you lose touch with who you really are.
Yeah.
And so the more you chase that fantasy of acceptance, the more isolated and lonely you feel because whatever acceptance you get is on the basis of this fake thing that you calculated and made up in order to get that acceptance. So I think the antidote to that is just integrity. Being on the outside who you are on the inside, and if that is accepted, that's great. And it doesn't. There's few things that feel better than being seen as who you really are and being accepted.
Yeah.
And then if it's not, then good. You want to know who you don't get along with, so you don't have to waste any more time with them, right?
That's so true. Like, and I think that with my personality, I always come at things where I give too much information. I'm like just like a complete open book, and sometimes I have to remind myself. It's like, dude, people don't want to get hit with the book. They just want to read it. So start out conversations slow. Cause like a lot of times I'll give just too much information and I'll seem overbearing or I'll be way too talkative. But my approach to conversations is always like, I want you to know that the reason why I'm speaking to you is because I want to know about you. I'm interested in you. If there was no reason for that, I wouldn't be here talking to you. And like, that's like what I try to convey when I start talking to people. And sometimes I think people just get lost in my noise, because I'm a blabbermouth. I just tell everybody everything all at once.
Well, curiosity is a really great trait to have.
Yeah.
And because it leaves you open to new possibilities, and you never know when you're going to have a life-changing realization or experience. But if you're not curious and you think you've already got everything figured out, you could spend a decade just with your head down doing your little thing and think, where'd all the time go? I haven't changed at all. I haven't learned at all. I have more money in the bank account or whatever, but is that what life is about?
Yeah. Even sometimes less money in the bank. Some people get stuck at that job at, I don't know, at a restaurant. And not saying people at restaurants don't make a lot of money, but like, they're a waiter and they're a career waiter, and they're very happy with how much money they make, and they're happy with their lifestyle of working late and having a drink at the end of the night or whatever. And then, 10, 15 years goes by and they're like, oh, there's other restaurants. I could have worked at, 30 different other restaurants or something like that. That's just a projection of my thought. I don't know what it's really like to work at a restaurant, but like I see a lot of people who work in these jobs that are service industry jobs. And I feel like a lot of people right now are struggling just with certain things. We were in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a couple weeks ago, and we were at an Applebee's, and the waitress. That's another thing. Maybe my trait is because I'm from up north or from Pittsburgh. People talk a lot in Pittsburgh. The waitress was very, very open to tell us her whole story. And, she was like, yeah, I got like 3 jobs. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it just sounded like she was drowning in work, but yet she was very, understandable, relatable, and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people will put a positive spin on a difficult situation. And,
Yeah.
Again, because you want to be acceptable or whatever. But the best way to never be okay is pretending to be okay.
I think everybody does that a little bit, just because, sometimes you have to lie to yourself, because when things aren't okay, you have to convince yourself that it's going to be okay. So maybe that's not a lie. Maybe you're just like giving yourself a little truth bomb and you're just not ready to hear the truth, because like, gosh, man, we have so many different things that can happen in a split a moment. And if you're not ready to handle, whether if it's win the lottery or having, diagnosis with, whatever illness or whatever, you gotta somehow muster that like positive energy to continue going, or you have to muster like just like some like reassurance that like, all right, here we go. Like this is happening. I got my shoes on. We're ready to do it. And whatever happens, I know that God is going to be there, and basically I'm going to be okay.
Well, that's certainly the promise. He's going to wipe away every tear from our eyes.
Yeah.
What happens between now and then is up for anyone's guess,
Yeah.
But speaking the language of okay,
mm-hmm.
I guess the goal is to be okay with whatever the Lord allows, because He knows better than I do.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm not the judge of what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
I gave up that right a long time ago. He's the judge of what's okay for me.
That's true, man.
And I gotta say, that's not always a comfortable thing. It's not an easy thing to do. And when things don't make sense at all, you want to make sense out of them, but sometimes you can't. But you can still trust the one who's in control.
Yeah.
And say, okay, well, you're in control, and you have the power to change this right now, but you're not. So there's something in here for me, and I'm okay with that. I'm just going to trust you.
Yeah. That's a hard ask when you're being dragged through the mud. And I feel like, with my beliefs, it's like, it's so easy to fall from that, like knowing that, and I think what happens when something tough happens, sometimes just saying like, all right, God's got my back, I'm ready for this, helps me a lot, and helps me realign where my brain is, like say if like, I don't know, one time, Ethan, he was going down a hill and he smashed his face all up. It's like scrapes from forehead to chin. And, you know, I was like, I got to take him to the hospital. And I didn't know if he had a concussion or not, but I was worried, you know. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I just got home, and Angela's like, listen, when Ethan wakes up in the morning, don't, you know, make a big deal of it. He fell and he got hurt. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, he fell bad. I mean, he's like really scraped up. And I was like, I got to see now. And from that moment on, just from like, I don't know what I'm about to view, because like Ethan has hit his head a couple times hard, and I'm just worried about every hit the kid is like taking, you know. And the way Angela was talking to me, it was like a serious thing. Like before I get to his room, I just like, all right, I know God's going to work this out. It's going to be okay. You know, whatever it is, it's going to be good. And he's going to be fine. And I look at his face, and I forgot that I was like, oh my gosh, like, what happened to you, dude? That doesn't just happen when you fall down in a driveway. And it's like, oh yeah, he slid 20 feet on his face, you know, from trying to ride a skateboard or a bike or whatever it was. And I'm just like, oh man, I forgot that whole like, oh yeah, God's got my back thing. I'm just like, immediately I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, I got to get this kid to the hospital, make sure we do a little test on him, make sure he's okay. And then, yeah.
Yeah, the God's got my back thing, it's not always what people think.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he in my experience, he tends to walk me through the things that I'm most afraid of. He doesn't protect me from them.
Yeah.
He brings the storm, and I have to go through the storm with him.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think, you know, that's the way to be liberated from fear is, you know, if you're afraid of heights, you go bungee jumping, and you go through that thing that you're afraid of, and then you're not afraid of it anymore. And I think, you know, he does that with us, but there's no assurance that he's going to keep us from difficulty.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of assurance that he will be with us in the difficulty.
Yeah.
And walk us through it for sure.
Yeah. That is a statement that I should have like tattooed on my arm, you know. But I don't know, like I walk around, people always say like, Bob, you're so positive, and Bob, you're like so easy to talk to and easy to get along with. And I'm like, really? You think so? And then, you know, I try to look at people's perspective, their outlook on me and my family. Cause like, dude, we're like the loud family in the cul-de-sac. You know, we got the wild, crazy kids. Mm-hmm. I'm always like, you know, like, stop choking your brother, or like stop spraying the water in the house, you know, like things like that. And I just sit there and think to myself all the time, like, this is many different lessons I'm just like not learning from. What are you trying to show me, Lord?
That's a great thing to ask, for sure. Yeah. What do I need to know about this?
Yeah. Sometimes, dude, I just don't have any answers. And I just sit there and go, okay.
Have you ever had like an epiphany though, as a response to that?
Well, yeah. I mean, like Ethan, he's 10 years old. He decides to take our wand, or shower wand. He's in my shower. You know, he has his own shower, but he's in my shower for some reason. Now, he doesn't have a wand in his shower, but he takes my wand and he just starts spraying the popcorn ceiling. And I'm like,
why wouldn't you?
Well, number one, I'm just like, you know, he goes, oh no. And I'm like, I'm hearing him. He's like freaking out. And I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, Dad, you got to come in here now. You got to come in here. And I'm like looking at him. I'm like, what's going on? I don't even look up. And he goes, And then I look up and I'm like, what in the world? It's soaking wet up there. He goes, I don't know how it happened. I'm like, yeah, you do. You were in the shower. You're the only one in the shower. And he's got the wand in his hand. And I just like, he thought I was going to be mad at him, you know? And it's just like, Like, I can't believe you did that, dude. What made you think that that was going to be okay? And he just like was lying and lying and lying. So I started getting agitated at him, like, dude, there's no need to lie. Like, you're not in trouble. Every time I tell him all the time, I say, dude, anytime you do something stupid or you break something or something stupid, as long as you just come and tell me that it happened, or if you don't lie about what it is, you're never going to get in trouble. So just tell me the truth. And he was like, well, it was an accident. I'm like, I bet it was an accident. He's like, but I sprayed the nozzle up. And I'm like, all right, just let's get a towel and dry it off. And I think that the lesson I was learning was to like be patient with him while he's trying to figure something out, because he doesn't want to lie, but he doesn't want to get in trouble either. And, you know, I guess that he has gotten in trouble in the past for certain things. So he thought he was going to get in trouble for this too. You know, when he breaks stuff like maliciously, like he has money as a 10-year-old kid, like with birthday money and cutting the lawns and stuff. We make him pay for stuff that he breaks. Or we make him pay for, you know, I don't want to say that as long as it's malicious. If it was accidental but he'll break something on purpose or do some harm to his brother's toy or something like that. I'm like, well, you just got to buy him a new one, you know? So he thought he was going to be tasked with paying for the drywall, paying for the grout. And I'm like, no, dude, you told me you did it. You told me to come over and check it out. We're good. I'm just going to need your help when I go to repair it. And he's like, all right, cool.
Right. The honesty is the essential piece.
Yeah.
You know, deceit doesn't go anywhere that anyone really wants to go.
Yeah.
You gotta believe a lie to even start down that path.
Yeah.
For sure. I've had all kinds of epiphanies like that where, you know, I'm in a circumstance and I'm like, what do you want me to know about this right now? What am I supposed to know? You know, so
yeah.
I can give an example. So, and by the way, we can talk more about my background and how I came to faith and all that stuff. It's, you know, I wasn't necessarily raised in it. I became a Christian when I was in the military, because I realized I was wrong about a bunch of stuff. That's what led me into, you know, faith in the first place. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so I've been following Jesus since 2006. So that's 19 years now. Mm-hmm. So there's been all kinds of times where, you know, he shows me that I'm wrong about something, or that I need to see something that I couldn't see before, or all kinds of stuff like that. And really, you know, I would tell anybody, you know, one of the key points of following Jesus is transformation. He's going to make us to become something that he made us to be.
Yeah.
You know, and for the apostles, he said, I will make you to become fishers of men. I'll take what you are now, you're fishers of fish. I'll take that. I made that, but I'm going to bring that to a whole different level and make you become something else. Mm-hmm. And so that process of transformation is something that I've always been particularly interested in. But one of the primary ways that works is through him teaching us that we're wrong about stuff. Yeah. So it's not exactly a pleasant experience, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, just a short example. I grew up north in Michigan, Wisconsin, skiing a lot when I was a kid, mm-hmm. and I loved to ski. You know, I lived in Marquette, Michigan for a while, and, you know, the snow and the skiing and sledding and snowmobiling and all that stuff. I love winter sports. Well, I live in Georgia now, and obviously there's very little snow here. We did get some last winter, but, you know, it lasts for...
Yeah, we went sled riding here down the road here.
Yeah, nice. And then like 24 hours later, the snowman's melted and all this stuff. So
yeah.
Anyway, so I wanted to teach my girls how to ski. So I decided I'm going to get them all the stuff, you know, snow pants, ski jacket, goggles, mittens, ski socks, then put them on an airplane, bring them up to somewhere that has snow, get them out there. We got to rent skis. We got to get the lift tickets. We got to do all the stuff, you know. So the first year I took them to Connecticut because it's an easy flight up from Atlanta. I think it's Hartford, and there's 2 resorts within 30 minutes of the airport. You know, they're not anything big, but when it's their first time, they just need a bunny hill. You know, so I go up there, you know, so I buy all this stuff and I get, you know, fly them up there, get the rental car, get all their stuff on, all their gear, rent the skis. You know, I'm already in it like $1,500 or whatever, you know, and right off the bat, they're just nothing but like complaining, you know, like, I can't do this. This is terrible. This was a stupid idea. You're a horrible teacher. Why did you ever want to do this? Like, we hate this. We want to quit. We want to go home. We should have never come here. You know, and they're like falling, and their skis keep popping off. And then my younger one had to go potty. So, you know, I got to trot her over to the bath. First take the skis off, then trot her over to the bathroom, then take the ski boots off, then take the snow pants off. Then send her into the bathroom. She does her thing, comes back out, put the snow pants back on, put the ski boots back on. But, you know, it's this big production. And, you know, I was starting to lose my patience and get frustrated. And the kids were just complaining and complaining and complaining. So it was one of those moments where I was like, I could use some wisdom here. You know, like, can you show me what I need to know, please? You know, because, you know, anybody in a situation like that, you know, what do you think? What's the appropriate way to respond to this? Well, your first instinct is to do what you've seen other people do, right? So I'm thinking, well, how would my dad respond to this? You know, okay, when I was 7 and my dad taught me to ski and he paid all this money, and he would have said, you know, I didn't fly your butt up here and spend all this money for you to quit. So you're gonna ski, whether you like it or not. You're gonna learn how to ski, you know. And so I thought about that, and I thought, well, that's probably not going to give me any kind of good results, you know, so I'm not going to do that. So what should I do? You know, so I pray about it. And then I had this flash of insight, you know, they're afraid. That's the problem, is they're afraid. The reason that they're complaining is because they're afraid. And that's the problem. So that was so helpful for me, because I realized, oh, so they're telling me I'm a terrible teacher because they are afraid of falling on skis and they don't want to take this risk and whatever. But their fear is being communicated to me as criticism. Well, how often does that happen? You know, I took that lesson and brought it to work with me and realized there's grown adults my age or older that they don't know how to communicate their fears any other way than criticism and complaining. You know what I mean? So in that moment when we were skiing, I realized, oh, what they're afraid, you know, if they're complaining, then how would I respond to the complaining? Tell them, you have no reason to be complaining. You know, you should be grateful. You know, but that's not going to get me anywhere, because that's not the root of the issue. So but the wisdom I got was they're afraid. So the answer that I got was, what they really want, what they need, is reassurance. You know, so every time they would complain, I would reassure them about the actual fear underneath the complaint. So they say, you know, this is too hard. And I'd say, I know it's hard. It was even harder for me when I was your age, but you're already doing better than I did on my first day, and I'm so proud of you, you know. Or, I don't want to fall and get hurt. You know, it's okay to fall. You got snow pants on. I fell way more times than you when I did this. You're doing great, you know. And just reassurance. And, you know, we want to quit, and, you know, we can take as many breaks as we want. We can get hot chocolate whenever we want. But we're going to stick it out today because it's going to be a lot more fun than you think it's going to be. And I just want to reassure you, this is normal for everybody. Their first time, all they do is fall, you know, like reassurance. And next thing you know, by the end of the first day, I had them on the regular chairlift.
Wow.
You know, I think I had 3 days to ski with them. And I was like, when I first got there, I was like, it's probably not realistic to expect that I'm going to get them on the chairlift before the 3rd day.
Yeah.
You know, like, I want to be realistic here and not overcommit, whatever. Okay, third day, but no. Once I figured out that dynamic, that what's really happening is they're afraid. That's what's underneath all of this, and what they need because of that is reassurance. That was the obstacle, and boom, I had that insight, which I did not come up with.
Yeah.
It was given to me as a response to me asking for wisdom, and it's just changed the whole thing. And so that was the first year. We've done 2 trips since then, so now it's a family tradition. And this year we went to Park City, Utah.
Oh, wow.
And we skied everything. We even did some black diamonds, and
No way.
we were at, some of those mountains, it takes like over 30 minutes to ski from the top to the bottom. So we're at this one, it's towards the end of our trip, and I'm thinking, I'm going to like ski down ahead of them and then stop and turn around and pull my phone out and get a video of them skiing down. So I kept trying to get down ahead of them, and then I would stop and they'd be right next to me, so I actually had to tell them, like, why don't you just stop here? Let me ski down a couple hundred yards, wait for me. I'll give you a signal. Then you can come down, because I want to get you on video,
That's awesome.
But that, I think a lot of people, or the temptation for me at the time was like, I don't want to deal with this crap. I'm just going to not do this again. I guess skiing's not for you.
Yeah.
We're just never going to do it again, because I tried to do it and all you did was complain. And, it'd be easy to never
not spend the money and not go.
Never understand that the whole thing was because of fear.
Yeah.
But that was such a valuable lesson, because like I said, I started to see it all over the place,
Yeah. Well, I think you have a knack for figuring things out. So I don't necessarily know. Yeah. I had a thought. I just don't know if my thought is, like, you yourself are very good at figuring things out in general. Mm-hmm. So, when you said, let me know, what am I to see or whatever, God has already got that shit like shifted and just shooting all your nerves and you have the ability to figure things out. Sometimes I sit there and ask the same question and I don't ever get an answer because I just sometimes don't see it, So it's, I don't want to say blind, but like I must miss it.
Yeah, well, I think everybody hears the voice of God or the voice of truth, and everybody hears the voice of the accuser.
Sure.
But most people don't really think about it that much, but I think if you really pay attention to your thoughts, you can't take credit for all of them, can you?
Yeah, that's true.
There's certain thoughts that you can't stop having, no matter how much you will to stop having them. Can you really say that those are your thoughts? Well, they're in your head, but how did they get there,
Yeah.
So I think, there's those old cartoons with the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other. Those are trying to communicate something that's true about reality, is that we have different sources of logic that are speaking into our consciousness at whatever given time. And it's very important to tune in to the right ones and to tune out of the wrong ones, right?
Yeah. You have a very interesting story of coming to faith. Do you want to share that on the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to share whatever you want. So I guess, did you have any particular questions? Do you want me to just go for it?
No, yeah, just go for it, man. Just go for it.
Yeah, so actually, in order for me to come to faith in Jesus, which is where I've been now for 19 years, I had to lose my faith in the other stuff that my faith was in, or even hope. So I had to come to the realization that my hopes were misplaced and they were in things that could never satisfy them. And so when I was a kid, the first thing I lost faith in was actually religion.
Mm.
So I grew up going to church, and at that time, I had grandparents that were missionaries on my dad's side, and then an aunt on my mom's side that was a missionary. And, but church for me was about religion, and religion was about basically ethics, be good. And if you're good, you'll get rewarded. If you're not good, you'll be punished. Very basic, what I picked up, and so that whole like religious, like I'm going to dress up and I'm going to pretend that everything's fine and I'm going to be good and all that. Well, I totally lost faith in that when I was in high school. My parents got divorced when I was 14. And so I thought, okay, they've done they go to church every weekend and they make all the claims and they say they believe all this stuff, but it couldn't stop this from happening. So what's the use? It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So I had to lose faith in that, so then where does my faith go? Well, it goes to, at the time, technology and, progress and, science and all that stuff. Like, okay, well, religion is not going to really it's not going to solve anything. It's not going to help anything, at least the kind that I had lost my faith in. So maybe, if we all like put our minds together and figure it out and use technology, we can solve all the problems. So I think that's a pretty typical place. There's a lot of optimism back then, a lot more than there is now, in the 90s, with like Star Trek and all the TV shows and, the internet had just come out and there's all kinds of optimism about the future and, we're going to solve whatever the problems are,
Yeah.
Well, so then I go in the military and next thing you know, I'm deployed and I'm experiencing warfare, and that just totally annihilated any faith that I had in humanity.
Yeah.
I used to think, somewhere there's a grown up, there's a responsible adult in charge and they won't let it go to crap,
Yeah.
But then you realize like, actually, no, there isn't, and we can claim that we're going to fix things, but we can't actually fix things. And the problem with the world is a lot deeper and more difficult to deal with than we want to admit or acknowledge, So, so I lost my faith in humanity. So I lost my faith in religion and formal religion, or that in the idea that being good was the way to have good things happen.
Yeah.
And then I lost my faith in humanity as a response to just seeing the chaos of warfare and just the absurdity of it. And, coming to terms with the reality of the human condition, which is, we're all flawed beyond our own ability to correct the flaws, and we're all going to die. The human condition, that's sin and death. And there's nothing that we can do to break free of it on our own power. It's not possible, no matter what we think or whatever technology. So, so it was in kind of that season where I started to really like ask these questions like, well, where can I find any meaning, or like, what should I do with my life, or what should I do with myself, or like, what does it even mean to be a real man? Because I had these ideas about what a real man is, and I took the military route, so I'm working with real men, warriors, and tier 1 special forces guys, and I'm there working with real men, but that's not what I want. I don't want to be like these guys. They're big and tough, but they're also
Human.
proud, and they've got a lot of regrets that they carry around, and a lot of them have anger problems, or get a little wild at the bar, or women problems, or the divorce rate's 90%, and like I thought being a man was about being big and strong and tough and killing bad guys, but then when I see the people who are actually doing that, that's not what I want to be.
Yeah.
So asking all these questions and really having my world paradigm just kind of shattered and trying to fit the pieces together. So that brought me to re-examining some of the stuff that I had been exposed to through religion, but not from a religious lens, but through like a meaning lens, like what does Jesus have to say about what it means to be a man? So I start looking at him and realize actually the stuff that he did was way more difficult than the stuff that big old macho tough guys do. Like humbling yourself and laying aside your authority. And, like in Philippians 2, it says he gave up everything. He took upon himself the form of a man, and he humbled himself all the way to obedience of death on a cross. Like that sounds like that took a lot more courage than being tough and strong and not admitting, your regrets and all that kind of stuff. So it was like a higher calling. So I was really encouraged by that. I started to get some clarity on, that's the kind of man that I want to be.
Yeah.
But at that time I didn't have any understanding of the historicity of it or whether or not it was true, but at least as a story, like I can see that there's something here resonates with me, and I want to become like that,
Yeah.
So at the same time, I was also wrestling with this kind of existential crisis of like, what's worth living for? Like what am I living for? Like, people get these, they have these dreams or fantasies of, like I want to become a Navy SEAL, because if I become a Navy SEAL, then I'll get all this respect and honor, and people will know that, I'm badass or whatever, or, like, so I want to get this approval and admiration and appreciation. The way I'm going to do it is by becoming this thing, but is that really worth living for? Is, honor or people's approval, or, like having your high school buddies envy you for your accomplishments, like, is that the thing that you want to live for? And so I was I used to, lay in my tent when I was deployed and think about stuff like this and think like, well, I thought I was going to like save all my money on this deployment and then go home and buy a motorcycle, and that was going to like make it all worth it.
Yeah.
But if I die here, who cares about a motorcycle? Like that's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
So that's not worth living for. It's definitely not worth dying for. So what is worth living for? So it took me months of asking that question and kind of dwelling on that. Like if I'm going to live for something, I want it to be worth it, Well, so at the same time I had started to look at Jesus as an example of what it means to be a man. And, it turns out that he had a motive for living his life as a man, and it was out of love.
Yeah.
So what if that's the reason? What if that's the thing that's worth living for more than anything else? What if it's love? Well, that would mean that it's also the thing that's worth dying for more than anything else. And, the more I thought about that, I was like, that's it. It's got to be it. If it's not worth dying for, it's not worth living for. And Jesus literally said, greater love has no man than this, that he'd give his life for his friends. And I was in a situation where I was watching that happen. People dying for their friends. Ultimately, that's, I think, what people die for on the battlefield is their friends,
Yeah. I agree with that.
So that
I don't have experience in that. I'm just saying, like, through my friends who are in military, I get that.
Yeah. And you were saying earlier that you like to talk to people and you get a lot of significance from interacting with people. And, well, I think part of that is because it has to do with what you're made for, which is love, which is knowing and being known.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So anyway, so I started off there, and another thing that I came across at that time was this book, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And so he's explaining Christianity. And at that time, I think it was a series of radio addresses that was during World War II, maybe in 1941 or 1942. So C.S. Lewis was a dean at Oxford, and he did a series of radio broadcasts to the soldiers that were fighting World War II about what it means to be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And so that got turned into a book, and it's called Mere Christianity. So there's a bunch of chapters explaining what Christianity is. So I found a copy of that in this library tent on the base that I was at, and I was reading through it, and I realized this is not what I thought it was. This is not at all what I thought it was. I thought it was about ethics, primarily about ethics, and yes, it has ethics, but that's not, it's much more than ethics. And there's a chapter in the book called, I think it's called Nice People Are New Men, where he's talking about how the purpose of Christianity is not to make us nice, it's to make us new. It's to transform us into a new kind of man. And that really resonated. That's like just along the lines of what I was wrestling with at the time. So I thought, if this is an option, if I can make love my purpose, my reason for living, and aim at love as the thing that I'm living my life for, and in doing that somehow be transformed to be more like him, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So that's the decision I make. And it made a lot of sense at the time. And, the alternative to trusting him and to pursuing that path would be really just to live for myself and to trust my own opinion. But I had been proven wrong enough at that point that I didn't have any confidence in my own opinions.
Yeah.
So I set off on that path, and I wanted to be transformed, and also I think if you're involved in any kind of chaotic situation like combat, or, a lot of people go through trauma in their families or whatever, you're experiencing evil. And I think that whenever you have an experience with real evil, you have a great risk of being infected by it. And that happened to me, and it happened to a lot of my buddies. Is we came back from our deployments infected by evil, and what that looks like is a lot of guilt and anger and feelings and memories and resentment and, things that are, in your heart causing problems, and you don't know exactly what they are and why they're there. And, you get infected, and I wanted to be healed from that too. And experiencing that evil and realizing that it is what it is, evil is what it is, and just being disgusted by it, and then looking within and seeing it in myself and all of that. And, that was a big driver for me at the beginning. Is I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want to be one of the 20-something guys a day who kill themselves because they've been infected and they don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So that's what led me down the road in the first place. So when I got out in 2006, the summer, I went to college in Wisconsin, and so I'm a follower of Jesus insofar as I want him to transform me, and I want to learn what it means to live a life of love. Not particularly interested in formal organized religion and getting dressed up and pretending that I'm better than anyone or anything. Like, I just, whatever is real here, that's what I want. So I got involved in Campus Crusade, and that was tough. That was a tough transition. Like I said earlier, going from a life that's completely mission focused to being totally self-focused was really difficult for me. Probably the most difficult thing. But it was also a season that I had the Lord walking me through it. He was with me through all of that and guiding me along the way and beginning that process of transformation, right? Mm-hmm. So how's that? I'd love to get into what the process of transformation consists of and how it works out, because that's something I've spent a lot of time noodling on.
Yeah.
And it's been huge in my life. But how's that for just a general
Yeah, that's, I mean, that is good. Like I remember this from what you've told me in the past, we're telling people who are listening now, and I feel like, with Christianity being a religion that is like organized, a lot of people do not hear the stories of you, like your stories. Like there's so many Christians that follow Jesus that have your story. And it's really strange coming from the film world. I think anybody in the film world can listen to your story and be like, okay, I get it. I mean, I understand it. I'm willing to maybe take this approach that Andrew did, because that organized religion is literally, I mean, I've had friends say that they left Christianity because it was like a jail, and although I still go to what I would consider a big box Christian store, I still have some of the same like aspirations and learning about our Lord like you do. Like, and I don't think I would tell anybody to just go to any church, because like sometimes the church that you go to might turn you off and you might not be happy to be there. Sometimes I know that Angela and I, we left a church in Mount Lebanon in Pennsylvania that we loved a lot. And we had like friends there that felt close. And we moved away, and it got harder and harder to get to that church. And we tried out different churches that was closer to our home at the time. And we just felt like, oh man, it's like cold. And you know me, I talk to everybody, and I'll meet you the very first day and like, come to my house and have some dinner. I'll make dinner for you. Come hang out. I want to get to know you, and we didn't like the church because it felt a little too organized. It's like, I mean, not even organized. It felt cold. It felt like, we were there, and the people that were next to us is there because they felt like they had to be there, because either they owned a business and it was like they were upkeeping, either they're like, we're a Christian company and they were there. I mean, I'm sure that's just me being cold to the atmosphere that I was cold to, but I just felt like it wasn't great. And then when we landed at Southside Church, we kind of felt a little bit of the big box church. And Angela and I, although, following Jesus, it was the only church that we were like, okay, I appreciate what Andy Stanley is saying. I can understand what he is saying. It's not a hard time to listen to it, because there's some churches where it's just like they're preaching the Bible to you and you feel guilty for what I just feel guilty for some reason. I mean, obviously I'm a sinner, but like, I don't know, like I live a pretty clean and normal life. Like, why am I feeling guilty right this second? And then, when we found Southside Church, it felt like, we weren't guilty. We were among people that were like us, and we were just trying to find, that avenue to the Lord again, like for Jesus. And like, I was like, all right, I can do this. And then we started going there more and more and more. And finally, Angela and I, we were like, hey, I think we like the people here. Like, not just the sermon, but we like the people here too. Just the small interactions, and Angela would go on Wednesdays and help clean up and move garbage or whatever. I would always be working, but we like the people. And that's when we were like, all right, it's time to start a small group, or not start, join a small group. And that's like when we met you, and just because of the small interactions of other people, we felt like, oh, everyone at this church is like this. So we decided to just open ourselves up to be vulnerable to whomever, because it's kind of odd, going to a church and they're like, all right, well, we're going to put you in a group. Like, who are you putting with it? We don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, I think people have a lot of weird double standards when it comes to church, but if you look at it like you look at everything else, so if you go to a
Can you pull that mic a little closer to you? Sorry.
like if you go to a dentist and you have a bad experience, do you lose all faith in dentistry and you reject the whole thing altogether? No, not necessarily. You just go to a different one until you find one that suits you, or the same thing with, if you go to an auto mechanic and you get ripped off, do you think every auto mechanic is a thief and a crook and I'm never ever going to one ever again? Well, some people do that. Some people do that with church too, but it's a foolish thing to do. So I think it's healthy to find one that fits for you, that's a good fit for you, and to go through that process and look. But ultimately, it comes down to, what are you there for?
Yeah, that is true. I would assume anybody that goes to church is there to strengthen their relationship with God. I know our family, it was, and our second was, we now live in a state where we did not live before, and we need a community.
Mm-hmm.
And literally when we got our small group, I, automatically connected with you, and I knew that I was like, all right, I'm going to try to hang out with him outside the small group. And, for a while we tried doing that. Like I tried including Jesse and stuff, and Richard, once again, I have a really great relationship with Richard, and, we all like did stuff together. Or I shouldn't say we all, I tried doing stuff together. It didn't always work out. I was always working, and the film industry just crushed whatever chance I had to have friends and stuff like that. But, you would always be there when I said, hey, you doing anything? And you'd be like, yeah, let's hang out, and, that was a huge thing for me, and sometimes I may have, I'm saying, a lot, but sometimes I personally put a lot of pressure. Like, I don't know if I should, call Andrew, because I just hung out with him like 2 weeks ago. Like, I don't know, he's got his own family. He's got his own thing going on. He's already busy. He's got a full plate. And sometimes I wouldn't call you just because, like, I figured you were busy because I was always busy. And I just thought I had a freak thing where we didn't work that Thursday night or Friday night or whatever it was. And, like, I can hang out. So I just, like, I don't know, he's probably busy. So I didn't call. And I did that to a lot of friends because I was, like, thinking I was going to bother them. Well, I learned, after a while, like, of being around you, like, no, I could have called you anytime, And one of the things that our church, or the church now, with Southside, like, I feel like I could do that with other people there. And I don't even have a relationship with a lot of people that are there right now, like I had with you. But there's, like, a lot of people that you can just say, hey man, I need this. You down to hang out or whatever? And there'd be people to say, yeah. So I feel like with Southside Church, not only has the message from Andy Stanley, like, sometimes I'm like, whatever, Andy, you're spinning your wheels doing donuts. I'll just take what you're saying and I'll get my own gist of it. And Angela and I will talk about it. But I'm really happy I got to say hello to whomever, or Ethan and Dylan. They had their chance to, at their little Wombaland, not Wombaland now, Upstreet. They're getting older now, Upstreet and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like there's more people out there that I like connecting with. Mm-hmm. So, and within our small group too, like with your story, you told me a story, and maybe you could share it again here about when you went to the mountaintop. Like, mm-hmm. I mean, it was powerful to me, Yeah. So how I came to faith and how you came to faith are two different things, but two different ways. But yours is, just very impressive and
so
relatable.
I'm kind of a thinker and an intellectual type, and I like to read a lot and stuff like that. So, what happens with people like me typically is, we'll get interested in Christianity and then we'll want to figure out all the theology. So I'll go study all the Bible so I can get all the facts and all the theology. And then I know more theology than you. So, hold that over other people's heads and whatever, and get in the little theology debate clubs and decide our theology is better than your theology. But it's all just based on this presumption of it's what I believe that matters, not what I do. As long as I believe the right stuff, it doesn't really matter what I do. It's about what I believe. And I could have easily gotten pulled into that just by my natural disposition. But thankfully that didn't happen, because only a year after giving Jesus control of my life and telling him, do whatever you want to do with me, transform me, fix me, whatever needs to be done, let's do this. I want to live a life of love as much as I can. Only a year after that is when this process of transformation really began for me. So, and like you mentioned, it involved a mountaintop experience. So I had been on a road trip my first summer of college. My best friend and I did this road trip, and we went out to all the national parks west of Wisconsin where we were going to school all summer long. And, so we'd go to like Yellowstone National Park, go get a backcountry permit for a week or so, go back in the backcountry, camp out for a week, eat wild fish and, all the stuff, and then hike out, go get a hotel room for a night, take a shower, get a free breakfast, rinse and repeat all the way across all the West, So he was with me for the first half of that trip, and he had to fly home early from California. So we had already gone like the North Loop all the way up through Canada and all of that, and down through Washington State. We had made it to San Francisco. He flew home from San Francisco. So I finished the trip by myself. So I went to Yosemite and Sequoia and Kings Canyon, and then across all the parks in Utah and in Colorado. I went to Mesa Verde, and I stopped on the way and visited one of the guys I had been deployed with. And so when I was with him, when we were driving, we were either talking or listening to music or some combination of the two. Well, once he left, I had this iPod that my sister had sent me with all these Andy Stanley sermons on it. So I was new to this faith thing. I wanted to get my bearings and figure out, like, how does this transformation thing work? So I'm listening to these sermons. And at that time, kind of as a detective, I want to figure out what this guy's wrong about,
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm driving across, Nevada and Utah and Colorado, and I'm listening to this series called It Came From Within. And you can still get it. I think it's on YouTube even. And it's about the things that get lodged in your heart that cause all kinds of chaos. And I mentioned earlier that when you get infected by evil, it's possible to get, when you experience evil, it's possible to get infected by it. Well, that's what the scripture would call like a heart infection. You get bitterness stuck in there, and then what do? Because it eats you alive and it causes all kinds of turmoil. And, so this series was about the things that get stuck in the heart. So it had one about anger, and, it had one about greed. And of course, nobody thinks they're greedy. So we'll skip that one. Who cares about that? It had one about envy, which is comparing yourself to everyone else and constant comparison, and, how that just causes all kinds of problems. And then there was one about guilt, and that one really resonated with me. And, so in Andy Stanley's sermons, especially at that time, and this was 2007, he always had an action item at the end. Mm-hmm. So for these, it would be, like if you're struggling with anger, you have to forgive. That's your action item. Or just make a list of the people that you need to forgive, or like take one step towards forgiveness, because that's ultimately the way to become free from this burden of anger that's poisoning you. But in my case, it was guilt. So he says the way, if you're carrying a load of guilt and you struggle to forgive yourself, and you have all these regrets that you lay in your bed and you're thinking about all the bad decisions you made and regretting them, and the way to resolve that is to reconcile with the people that you've wronged, and so like if you can, if they're still alive, get in touch with them and reconcile and apologize. And at that time, I thought, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and there's no way I'm ever going to do that. Of course. And that's what happens when we run into some of these truth claims is we think that can't be true because I know better, and then you have a choice. Am I going to trust my own opinion at this time, or am I going to trust what this says that contradicts my opinion? What if I'm wrong about this? So in this case, I thought there's no way I could possibly be wrong. Calling my ex-girlfriends on the phone and apologizing to them is just going to start trouble. It's just going to make it worse. It's going to stir up all this stuff. Like I imagine someone calling me on the phone like, hey, Andrew, hey, you remember that thing I did 2 years ago that you're still pissed off about? I just want to remind you I'm a jerk, like how is that going to fix anything? So I've got every excuse in my head. So for like a week or two, I'm thinking about it, but then I'm making excuses and I'm thinking about it like, yeah, but I do have all of the symptoms of what he was saying, but I just can't get on board with how this could possibly make anything better. So I'm not going to do it because I don't understand it. And I thought that I was willing to be obedient, but really I wasn't. I was only willing to agree with God on stuff, and the stuff I didn't agree with him in, I wasn't going to obey because I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me, and I was going to be the judge and decide what's right or wrong for me, and yada, 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 right? So, which is precisely what we don't want to do. But I think each of us needs to be pulled out of that paradigm and that mindset of putting ourselves ultimately in his place, like I'll decide what's right and wrong. It doesn't work out so well. So anyway, I had been wrestling with that, and I got to Colorado and I went up into the backcountry right outside of Rocky Mountain National Park. I think it's called the Roosevelt National Forest. And I'd been camping and hiking all summer long, had all this experience. I had a GPS. So I parked at the national forest. There's no trails. I just turn the GPS on, hike up 20 miles into the mountains, and set up a campsite. I'm hanging out up there and, fishing the streams and setting up rabbit snares and all the stuff. So after a few days, I got up one morning and look out my tent, and it's a beautiful morning. A hummingbird was buzzing around my tent. It woke me up. I look out the screen and there's a mountain not too far away. And so I think, today I'll climb to the top of that mountain. It can't be too hard. It's just straight shot, a couple miles. So in my bravado, I did not bring my GPS with me. I left that in the tent. Didn't wear a shirt. I took a bottle of water and some other stuff with me and set off for this mountain. So it took me a little longer than I thought because I was at like 12,000 feet. It's rough hiking. But I was up there by midday, and I got up there and took a break. I had brought a snack with me, had the snack, and I brought my camera. I took some photos. I'm walking around on the top of this little mountain. I think it's like Lookout Mountain or something like that. I think it's like 11,500 or 12,000 feet. So I'm up there for an hour or so, and then I think, well, it's time to go back. So I go back, and I realize I have no idea where my campsite is. And I didn't mark which way I came up because the top of the mountain is super easy to see from my campsite, but my campsite is not easy to see from the top of the mountain. And I just totally didn't think about that like an idiot. No. Like my pride got the best of me. So I think, this could be bad. Because I have a 360 degree view of wilderness. I have no idea. And if I pick the wrong direction, I could be going hundreds of miles before I hit anything, and it's all mountains.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could be out here for a long time. So I pick a direction and I hike down, and I realize like none of this looks familiar at all. So I turn around, climb back up to the top, pick another direction, hike down, 30 plus minutes. Again, I'm not seeing anything that looks familiar. So I turn around, climb all the way back to the top, hike down again. And that time I realize, I'm going to be up here for the night at least. It's starting to get dark. I better start making plans to bivouac up here, like sleep, I'm going to sleep under the stars. We're up at like 11,000 feet and it's cold at night
with no shirt.
Windy. Didn't have a shirt on, and it had rained that week. It had rained the night before. I had brought a lighter with me. I tried to start a fire, couldn't start a fire. Everything was wet. So I find this spruce tree on the side of the mountain with these low boughs, and there's like some broke off branches. So I got a branch and broke broke it down to a stick and like used the stick to dig a trench underneath these low boughs, and then like piled a bunch of boughs in this trench, and then had a big pile of like pine needles and boughs. So I like laid in the trench and like covered myself with all this pine needles and all this stuff under the low boughs, and think like, hopefully I don't freeze to death, but if I do, they're never going to find me.
Oh man. Buried yourself basically.
And it's a great place to contemplate, on the side of a mountain covered in pine needles with no shirt on, freezing your buns off, and with no assurance that you're ever going to get out of there. It's a great place for contemplation.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about all these regrets and that I have, and the guilt that I'm carrying, and I had survivor's guilt and all kinds of different guilt, and just all these ideas about it, beliefs that I had, that this is something that you just have to carry. There's nothing else you can do with it. You just have to carry it. You just have to deal with it, or like, yeah, I could go to like people go to counseling for stuff like this, but you can spend tens of thousands of dollars of counseling and spend a lifetime and maybe only deal with half of it if you're lucky.
Who wants to hear, and how do you feel about that?
Right. So just all these beliefs about this problem is not going to be solved by me reconciling with people that I've wronged. Like, this is a problem that I'm going to be living with for the rest of my life. And it would be naive of me to assume otherwise, So I pray in this ditch, or this trench, like, all right, Lord, you want me to make these phone calls? You get me out of here quick and easy. I'll make the phone calls. And I thought, I'll prove that this was a stupid idea. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to prove that you were wrong and I was right, because I can't be wrong about this. I'm so sure that I'm not wrong, So I wake up the next, or I didn't sleep at all. I got up at daybreak when the sun came up and there was enough light. I got up, I brushed myself off, I climb up to the top of the mountain, and I look around, and it's just totally discouraging. And I'm thinking about that story of the guy who like got pinned in Utah with the rocks, and he had to cut his own arm off. And I'm like, I'm going to be like this guy. Like, this could be terrible. So I get up to the top of the mountain, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to pray. So I get down on my knees, kneel down, and pray, the most holy prayer. Lord, you know the deal. You get me out of here. I'll make the stupid phone calls,
I'll do whatever you want.
Who hasn't bargained with him at some point,
Yeah.
So I say the thing, I say amen, I open my eyes, and in the distance, there's a gust of wind, and there's these pine trees in the distance, and the pine trees go like, they sway in the wind, and right behind the one that I just happened to be looking at that precise moment, this pine tree swayed, and there's my tent right there.
My gosh.
So I was like, all right, the quick and easy part, we're on track for that, So I hiked straight down, just went straight to my tent. It didn't even take me that long. It was only like a couple miles, and downhill. And I get to my tent, and I made myself some oatmeal or something, go to sleep, wake up the next day and decide, I guess I got what I was supposed to get here. I'm going to pack it all up. So I packed it all up and drove out, went straight to Popeye's Chicken. It happened to be my birthday that day, and got my phone out and thought, all right, well, it's my turn to live up to my side of the deal. I'm going to make the phone calls. I'm going to prove that only makes it worse, and my guilt's going to be worse when I leave this place than when I came in. And there's no way to really get rid of it. I have to carry it around for the rest of my life. And even if I went and spent tens of thousands of dollars of counseling, I would still be carrying around most of this. I'd be lucky to get rid of half of it in a lifetime, and yada, yada, yada. So I started making phone calls. So I call like my ex that is the most pissed at me, you know. So I call her, hey, why are you calling me? I'm calling you because I've been thinking about this and I want to just apologize for some of the stuff that I said and did to you and yada, yada. Next thing you know, she's apologizing to me and she's crying and then I'm crying and then we're forgiving each other. And I get off the phone and I'm like, well, that didn't go like I thought it would, like, okay, so that's weird, And so I go down this list of like 30 people and every single one of them not only answered the phone, but forgave me. And a lot of them had something that they wanted to apologize to me for. So I reconciled with 30, give or take, people that I had wronged in some way. And by the time I was done, it took like 2.5 hours. This burden that I was absolutely convinced I would be carrying for the rest of my life was gone completely.
Wow.
And that was when I really realized that obedience is not the same thing as agreeing.
Yeah.
And the most important lessons that the Lord has for us, we can only learn through obedience. And obedience means I don't understand why you're asking me to do this, and I don't understand how it's going to help anything, and I don't know how it works, and I don't agree with it, and I think it's going to backfire and whatever, but you said it, and you're the Lord, so you get to tell me what to do, and I don't have to ask for an explanation. I'm just going to do what you say, and that's what obedience is. And so that's how this transformation process works. So I started to become sensitive to that, and reflecting on that, I realized that there are certain stages to it. So in that particular story, so I had a season or, a period of days where I was making excuses of why I'm not going to do what this thing says I should do. Ultimately, why I'm not going to do what Scripture says that I should do. Scripture says, if you're on your way to make a sacrifice and you remember that your brother has something against you, drop your sacrifice, go be reconciled to your brother. That's more important to the Lord than going to church or going and doing your religious thing, is making sure that you're reconciling with the one who has something against you, So, okay, so that idea comes, I start making excuses of why I'm not going to do that. Well, that's this first stage of transformation. It's called conviction. And conviction, the symptom of conviction for me and probably for a lot of other people, the first symptom is excuses.
Yeah.
Because when you start to see something that you should be doing that you're not doing and you start to become convicted about it, the first thing you're going to do is explain why you're not going to do it, which is excuses.
Yeah.
So I started to become sensitive to that. So I would read Scripture and study Scripture, and I'd bump into something and think, well, that's not happening, and then I think, well, why not? What do I believe about that? Why do I think that that's not possible? Because I believe this other thing wasn't possible, and I was totally 100% couldn't have been more wrong about it. Like, okay, do I want to be wrong, or do I want to allow the truth to come in and change my beliefs and be transformed by the renewal of my mind?
Yeah.
So conviction begins, and the symptom is excuses, and then the next stage would be like confession, where you're just telling the truth. Like, I'm not going to do this. I don't see how this could help. I don't, I'm afraid of whatever happening. I'm going to confess this is more than I think I can handle, whatever the case may be. Through that process, through telling the truth to myself, to just speaking it out loud, telling it to someone else, praying the truth, that leads to the next step, which is repentance. And repentance is just changing your mind about something. Like, this was something that I would have never considered actually doing, and I never thought that anything good could come from it, but I'm starting to change my mind about it because I bumped into it I started making excuses, but I realized that I can't get around it because it's clear that I'm supposed to do this thing that I don't want to do. And now I'm realizing that maybe I had some false assumptions around it. So I'm going to start changing my way of thinking about this thing. And that's what repentance is. It's a change of mind. It literally means a change of mind. And then obedience.
Yeah.
So if you try to do obedience before you change the way you think about something, it's not going to stick because you still believe the wrong things. But you have to have your mind changed first through this other process before you get to obedience. And then obedience is what leads to transformation. And you see this process in Scripture all the time.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the miracles that Jesus did required some form of obedience. And most of the time he's asking these people to do something that up till then they have never believed that they could do ever. Like he's telling paralyzed people to stand up and walk. Like they don't believe that they can do that, but he's telling them to do it. And he's going to tell you to do stuff that you don't believe you can do. But if he tells you you can do it, you can do it. You know, and that's how this process kind of works. So, you know, there's one where he comes to the guy at the pool of Bethesda and he says, "Do you even want to get well? Like, what are you doing here? You want to get well?" And then he gets all these excuses. Like, of course I want to get well, but everybody else gets there before me, and I'm just stuck, and I'm a victim, and I've been here for years and years. But every time there's a shot, I miss it. And, you know, he's got his whole story about why he's going to stay in the state that he's in with the beliefs that he has. You know, and then Jesus says, now is the time to obey me. I want you to do something that you don't believe you can do. Will you try? You know, and that's what leads to the transformation. And that's how it works on some level with us. Yeah. You know, we bump into these things that we don't like, and they challenge us, and so we start making excuses about it, and he starts to stir up our hearts about these things, and then we think, well, it's clear that he's telling me to do this thing, but it still doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't understand how that's going to accomplish anything good.
Yeah.
That's where the rubber meets the road. You can choose to lean on your own understanding, and you can not have your mind changed and not grow and hold on to yourself and live for yourself and reject his authority and decide I'm ultimately going to be the one in charge of my life, and you can go your own way. And that's what most people do. Or you can say, maybe I have something to learn here. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I'm going to do what you told me to do, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. And on the other side of that obedience, I'll find out what the truth is.
Yeah.
That's how that process works. So for me, that's been going on now for quite a long time, 18 years since 2007. And that was a huge paradigm shift for me. Is he wants to liberate me from my false beliefs and false assumptions and false ways of seeing things. And he says that when the Holy Spirit comes, he will guide us into all truth. You know, well, that's how this process works. And it's a beautiful thing because he frees us from so many of the beliefs that we have are self-limiting and self-defeating, and they cause all kinds of problems. Mm-hmm. And we pursue the wrong things, and we have conflicting desires and deceitful desires and, you know, burdens that we've been convinced that we have to carry, and regrets and all kinds of stuff. He wants to set us free from all of that. But the only way for that to happen is we have to obey him. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
100%. You know, like, I think one of the things that people need to understand is patience too, because God is patient. I know that just through my life and through my experience, God has been patient with me, you know, and I think that's one of the things that I try very hard is to have patience. And patience has been a struggle for me the past like 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. Of having the ability to be like, okay, well, this isn't happening. This isn't going as fast as I want it to go. Or I don't know what's happening right here. I want to change, and I want it changed now. And being patient. I think that with that, I have to always remember patience. Be patient because God is patient. God is full of grace.
That was a huge one for me. And patience is one of the attributes of the fruit of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. So there's 9 of them. It's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And so patience is, these attributes are things that as you embark on this process of transformation, which is also known as sanctification, you grow in all of these attributes. So it's a great way to check your progress as a follower of Jesus or as a believer is, am I growing in love? Am I more loving this year than I was last year? Am I growing in joy? Do I have more joy now than I had in the past? And through the list, do I have more peace? Do I have more patience? And then if not, why not? What's keeping me from growing in patience? So that's a perfectly valid thing to pray about. Lord, I did a self-inventory and it seems to me that I am very impatient. I'm realizing that I'm impatient a lot and I want to be patient because I know that patience is a gift that comes through your Spirit. So will you show me what I need to know about patience and then help me to do whatever I need to do to cultivate that in my life, right? Yeah. And so that turns out that patience was a big problem for me as well. And I think you make a good point. He's incredibly patient with us. He's much more patient with us than we are with ourselves oftentimes. And, when you go into any journey, there's always a temptation at some point to, basically say, are we there yet? Yeah. But it's not necessarily, the journey's not always about the destination. It's about the process that happens along the way, right?
Yeah.
And so with patience and contemplating that and meditating on it and praying about it and searching the scriptures about it, I found that patience is a result of living in the mindset of scarcity.
Yeah.
And this is the prevailing mindset of the entire world is scarcity. There's not enough. So people wholeheartedly believe in this idea of scarcity. There's not enough. There's not enough what? There's not enough money. There's not enough time. There's not enough opportunity. There's not enough land. There's definitely not enough land. There's not enough of anything. So because there's not enough, I need to get as much of everything that I can and hoard it and keep it from other people so that they don't take my stuff because there's not enough for everybody to have enough. So my whole life is going to be about chasing this idea of abundance. How much is enough? I don't know, but I don't have it yet. So I'm going to keep acquiring more and more and more. And for me, I realized that the biggest symptom of this mindset was being impatient, because impatience is a result of believing that there's not enough time.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to wait for this. I don't have time for this. I don't have the time to deal with this. I don't have the time for this conversation. I don't have the time to sit at this stoplight. I don't have time for this crap. That's the scarcity mindset in action.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to go with that though. I mean, for people who do, I mean, that is a natural feeling, because when you think about, okay, what's the average lifespan of a human being? 76 years old, 74 years old. Well, that means you have 74 sunsets. I'm sorry, not 74 sunsets. You have 74 birthdays. You have 74 winters. You have like when you break it down like that, you don't have much time. So when you feel like you don't have the time, you definitely get maybe scared or afraid about what you've done in the past and what you have in the future. And, that could be a heavy burden on somebody thinking about that.
But is that true?
Well, it's true that you only get 74 winters.
Until what?
Well, until you pass, right?
And then what?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying for people who generally are afraid, and like this is probably what's going through their mind. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So I would say that this particular, call it a vice, the scarcity mindset, is very future oriented,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's, I don't have enough for retirement, and I don't have whatever enough to go on vacation, or it's very worrying. You're worrying about tomorrow,
Yeah.
is what you're doing, and it's future oriented. So I found that when the temptation is future oriented and you're getting pulled into contemplating the future, which is anything past the present moment, the antidote is to put your attention into the past and think, well, up until now, have I had what I needed? And the answer to that is pretty much, yeah. I've always had what I needed.
Yeah.
Up until now. But now I'm worried that tomorrow I won't have what I need, but that's kind of a stupid thing to be worried about, because my whole life I've always had what I needed.
Yeah.
Not necessarily more than I needed. I've had what I needed. So gratitude and looking back, looking at the past is a good way to fight that battle of being pulled into the future. And it works both ways. Some vices, like anger, for example, is much more past oriented. You're dwelling on some wrong that was done to you and how the other person needs to pay for it, and it's all in the past. Well, if you're tempted to get pulled in the past, then the antidote to that is to shift your attention to the future and realize that we have a promise. The Lord says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. He has promised that he is going to set things right.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen 100%. He promised it. So I can trust him with that, and I can let go of my desire to set it right on my own power and leave it up to him. And so I don't have to hold on to that burden of justice, so to speak, but the scarcity mindset is a tough one. But you think about it, you get into these traps, and you get talked into them by a very rational and logical argument of you only have 74 summers left or whatever, or 20 summers left or whatever, and you start to think, and you talk yourself into this, but what's the result? So you fantasize about this idea of having enough, and the more you think about it, the more you fantasize it, the more scarcity you feel. So in the name of this fantasy of abundance, you fall deeper and deeper into this mindset of scarcity, which is exactly the opposite of the thing that you're pursuing in the first place. Yeah. So it's one of these traps that you can fall into, of you get preoccupied with this idea, this fantasy of abundance, and the more and more you get preoccupied with it, the more scarcity you feel. It's self-defeating. Mm-hmm. So practically speaking, it's a very foolish thing to get stuck in. And then the practical outcome of getting stuck in that trap is you're impatient with everyone.
Oh yeah.
So so even if all of those perceived or those perceptions or beliefs that you have about it that led you to this conclusion are true, what's the fruit of going down that path? It's all rotten fruit. You're miserable, you're impatient, you're snapping at your own family or your coworkers or whoever, or people on the street, you're flicking people off in traffic, and you're preoccupied with worrying about yourself, about if you're going to have enough for tomorrow, and you're miserable. So who cares how true it is, right?
Yeah. I just have these thoughts all the time about talking to like non-believers or people who tell me that they were Christians and then left the faith. And I'm always interested in, in maybe their perception of just religion in general, So
Well,
they all have that mindset. But when you talk to these people, you probably have better success with your knowledge and all your studying. But when I talk to people, I sit there and, I tell them why I believe and why I continue to believe. And my stories aren't ever as or my reasoning with them isn't as like intellectual with them, because I always just, let them go off and let them be. Like, as far as they say they don't believe, I'm not trying to like fight them to like, just because I believe they should believe too. But I think that, if you were to give me one piece of advice to say to a non-believer that would tell you like, oh, I got 73 winters and 73 summers, and this is why I don't believe, like, what would you, I don't know. 'Cause like, I don't want you to be an apologist or whatever, but like, or to somebody who is convincing.
Well, I think so that process, like I said, it's conviction, confession, repentance, transformation, which comes through you believe differently, you behave differently. So conviction, confession, repentance, obedience, transformation. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
You can involve other people in the process, particularly when it comes to confession. And I think that's powerful. So it takes the form of testimony. So, you could say, man, I really struggled with impatience, but then I realized it was a total trap. And the nature of the trap was the more I worried about abundance, the more scarcity I fell into. And next thing you know, I'm snapping at everybody and I'm stuck in this story that I believe about myself that's not true, and it's causing all these negative things in my life. I'm confessing, I'm telling the truth. That's what all that confession is telling the truth. And that has that's powerful when it's in the form of a testimony. So I don't think it's necessarily effective. You don't see Jesus going around saying, you should believe this and you should believe that because of these reasons. He's not doing that. He's telling stories and trying to communicate truths through stories, and then giving people testimonies. So all of his interactions with people gave those people a testimony that they can share. So, he meets the Samaritan woman at the well. He has a short interaction with her. And next thing you know, she's his main evangelist. She's running around town telling him everybody needs to come and meet this man, based on that one encounter. Well, it's because he gave her in the interaction that they had, he gave her a testimony. She says, come meet the man who told me everything I ever did. So I think that's what when we're talking to anybody about the weightier matters, I think telling the truth is essential, and confession is the best way to do that, and say like, here's what I used to believe, and then here's how I got proven wrong.
Yeah.
And they might resonate with that. And then also, just so being honest about it, confession, and then also testimony, about whatever is going on. But I think it's super important to be authentic. The thing is, I think everybody's on their own journey, so you've got brand new baby believers that don't know anything, but they're really excited and they're trying to figure it out. They're going to make mistakes, just like everybody makes mistakes. And it's important to meet people where they are, and I think the temptation is, so I've been on this journey for, 19 years now. And so I'm at a certain point at it. So the temptation for me would, like, imagine if I had a map and, so like I'm at point 19 on the map, and I just learned something really important about point 19 on the map. You got to avoid this obstacle, right? How stupid would it be for me to bring this map to you who's on point 4 and be like, oh, you have to know this about where I'm at right now. This is so important. You got to know this. But it's not relevant to where you are right now.
Yeah.
What you want to know about is how to get through the obstacles at point 4 or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important to meet people where they're at and be patient with them.
Yeah.
right? Because we're all works in progress, and I can only speak for myself. I've often been frustrated with how long it's taken me to change, but it still has happened.
Yeah.
And there's many things that I thought I was going to have to carry around and deal with for the rest of my life that I'm totally free of now, and it's such a relief. And now I can share that testimony and say, you don't have to carry around that burden either. I had the same burden. Here's how.
Yeah. Let's go back to the map thing. That's powerful, that analogy with the map, because when you are being confronted by either a non-believer or someone who lost faith, they are on a map. And it is kind of ridiculous to tell them about a section of the trail they're not on yet. And if they come to you while you're at the spot where they are, and you don't acknowledge the spot that they are and telling them about something different, then it's never going to help them. Like, I haven't ever thought about that before until right now. So I'm going to use that analogy in the future because I find it very hard hitting. Because it's like there's so many people in the film industry that I talk to that were once believers, and then they just decided they didn't want to believe because, I don't know, like one guy's from Texas and he's like, oh, XYZ happened to me, and so the pastor did this and that, and it's just now I don't believe in religion, or I don't believe in Christianity, and you don't have an answer for the woes or the things that they have gone through because, well, I didn't have any answers or any scripture memorized or anything to aid in the conversation, However, if somebody were to meet that person and have the correct information and had that mentality, or not mentality, but the wisdom to meet them where they are, I think that person might have a chance to flip and become a believer again.
Well, yeah, I think the most important part of engaging in conversations like that is being prayerful about it. Like, all right, I'm going to have lunch with Bob. What do I need to know about this? Like, is there anything I need to know? Is there anything I need to do? Like, I'm not going to prepare for anything that could possibly happen because, first off, that would take forever, and only one thing is actually going to happen. So instead, I'm going to ask for wisdom. Will you prepare me and show me what I need to know? And then when it's time, will you speak through me into this person? And that's a lot more effective. But the thing is, okay, so that whole process of transformation, it primarily consists of realizing the stuff that you were wrong about and being led out of the deceptions that made you wrong about that stuff and being led into the truth, out of the darkness into the light, or Jesus says it's like you have a plank stuck in your eye and you're trying to help your brother who's got a speck of sawdust in his eye. Isn't it kind of silly to be trying to help him with his speck? If you've got a plank stuck in your own eye, first you got to clear your own perspective and get rid of whatever was distorting the way you see things. And then once that happens, then you can help someone else with their issues.
Yeah.
But you first have to go through it yourself and have your vision cleared up and your perspective fixed and all of that. So I think, it's just very important to be attentive to what he's doing. And also, okay, so along that line of thinking, there's some other very important lessons that I've learned pretty much all the hard way. And one of those is, it's very tempting for me, I think as part of the human condition, it's very tempting for us to want to do God's job for him. It's called putting yourself in God's place, and it's the quickest way to become like Satan is to put yourself in God's place. And so what are some of the things that God does that I think that I can do better. Well, when it comes to talking to people who believe differently than me, whether that's about questions of faith or whatever the case may be, I think that I am going to convict them.
Mm.
And I'm going to be the agent of conviction. I have the truth, and I am going to open your eyes to the truth and help you to see where you were wrong, and you're going to change your mind, and you're going to be transformed. And, I'm going to be the agent of conviction. The only problem with that is that job's already taken.
Yeah.
And, so that's a lesson I learned the hard way. I had the same guy that taught me to join the Air Force, and I went on that the road trip with. A few years later, he got involved with drugs, and I decided that I was going to help him. And the way I was going to do that was to convict him. And, can't you see what you're doing? If you could only see things the way that I see them, you would never do the things that you're doing. So the solution is you need to see things the way that I see them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to convict you. And I tried to do that for 6 months. And I tried everything else I could, and none of it worked at all. It just made the whole situation worse. And I was watching my best friend slowly die from heroin. And I was so frustrated about it. At this point, I had one of my first mentors. I was leading men's small groups at Buckhead Church, and the director of men's groups was a mentor of mine. And so we had been having lunch every other week, and he had been keeping tabs on everything that I was doing in that situation. So he, after 6 months of everything I tried is not working, because I'm trying to save my friend. I'm trying to be a savior, and I'm trying to convict him, and I'm trying to provide what he needs, and I'm doing all these things that aren't my job. So this guy says, well, you need to go take a sabbatical and get your head straight and pray about it, ask for wisdom, and come back with a new strategy, because what you're doing is clearly not working. So I went up to Oregon, and I was praying. I hiked around Mount Hood and for a week, and I was like praying about it, and what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What do I need to do? And how many times do we pray? What do I need to do? And after the whole week, I didn't really have any clarity at all. I didn't have the flash of insight.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling sorry for myself and thinking I got to go back, but I'm not ready to go back. And this is just going to get worse, and he's going to die, and that's going to be my fault, and all this stuff. So right before I hike back to the parking lot where the car is, I'm like, I'm just going to pray one more time. Please just give me something, and open up my Bible, and it's John chapter 16. And Jesus is explaining to his disciples, I'm about to leave, but it's good for you that I'm going, because when I leave, I will send the Holy Spirit. And when he comes, he will convict the world. And that's when it happened. It was like, that's the problem. I was asking him, what do I need to do? And the answer I got is, you need to stop doing my job.
Yeah.
You need to do less. I'm the agent of conviction, not you. That's the problem. You are in the way, and you suck at my job, and it's not working. And that's the problem, is you need to stop trying to do my job. You let me do my job. Okay, what's my job? You only have one job. Love. That's it. That's the only thing. Just, at one point, there's these law experts that come and they pin him, and they're gonna catch him in a question, and they say, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else hangs, all of it, all the law and the prophets, all of it hangs on these two commands. If you satisfy these two, you satisfy everything else. That's all I want you to do is love. That's it. But how many other things are we constantly thinking that we have to do in addition to that? And I have to save this person. I have to rescue this person. I have to provide for these people, and I have to convict these people, and I have to, no, you don't.
Yeah. Dude, you said so many powerful things so far here on this podcast. That is so true. When I see apologists, sometimes I think they're out there on the street corner, and they're doing their work, and sometimes I sit there and think to myself, I feel like you could be using your energy in a better situation. And, I feel like that people who have, been appointed to go do that sort of thing, maybe they don't have to do it so hard or rough. So,
Well, you'll know the tree by the fruit.
Mhm.
So people that are doing it hard and rough and aren't gentle about it are not particularly mature. They might be on the right path, but they might not be very far down it, and
Yeah.
it's a difficult thing. The good thing is that we're not the agents of conviction, and we're also not the judges either. That job is already taken. We're just responsible for love. When it comes to apologetics, the whole idea of apologetics is based on this verse in 1 Peter. It's 3:15. It says, "Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect." So apologetics done according to this is when people come and ask you, "Hey, Bob, why is it that you are so hopeful?"
Yeah.
That's when you give them the prepared answer that you've prepared to give them the reason why you're so hopeful. But you have to do it with gentleness and respect. And there's a lot of so-called apologetics that's not happening that way. But I think there's the one of the biggest problems, one of the hardest things in life is to pursue the right things.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of distractions and false pursuits that are diverting us from the right path. And we have all these fantasies and all these dreams about how we think things should go and things that we chase. And like I said, one of them is this fantasy of abundance. Like if I only had enough, if I only had enough for the rest of my life, then I could finally rest. And we aim at all these things, and they're the wrong things. And in Scripture, in Greek and in Hebrew, in both languages, the word that is used for sin is archery. It's an archery term that means to miss the mark. So it's like you're aiming at a target and you miss it. Well, perhaps the reason sometimes is because we're aiming at the wrong thing altogether. The reason you didn't hit the bullseye is because you were aiming at the wrong target.
Yeah.
And how many times do you hit the thing that you're aiming at and then you don't get what you thought you were going to get out of it, or you think, what I need is a college degree. That everything in my life has led up to this. I just have to graduate and then everything will be great after that. And then you graduate and it's not. And you're, I hit the target, but how come I didn't get what I thought I was going to get out of it, or whatever the case may be, So I think one of those false targets that is very tempting for a lot of people, especially if they're inclined towards apologetics, is this idea of being right. I want to be right. That's what I want to be. I want to be right. And this was one that it talks in the New Testament, like the disciples, multiple times it says, and the disciples were sitting there arguing about which one of them was the greatest. Like there's something innate in our nature that we want to be the correct ones above everyone else, and we want to be the ones that are right and all of that. And I would just suggest that that's not the right thing to be aiming at. And if the result of aiming at that thing is turning people off to the truth and pushing them away and making them feel unloved, then it's probably not a positive behavior,
Yeah. Well, I think that's good. I think we should end this podcast on that note. I just want to end it on that you do not have to convict, because that job is already taken. All you have to do is love.
So the Holy Spirit convicts. That's a huge one. And I mean, I learned that, but then I still catch myself.
Sure.
Especially as a parent, no kid. Like, how many times has lecturing your kids actually worked? Zero
man.
times, but we still do it.
It's funny they listen though, because I hear Ethan say the same stuff I'd say to him to his little brother. So I think maybe that's what apologetics try to do. Maybe they spit out the right sequence of words, and they're hoping that sticks with that non-believer or somebody who's questioning it, and they just walk on.
Well, the way that Jesus did it is he asked questions.
Mm-hmm.
He asked lots of questions. He asked like 300 and something questions. And when people asked him questions, he only answered 3 of them. That's it. So most of the time when someone asked him a question, he responded with a question. So like with my kids, I'll ask them the same questions that the Lord has asked me. Like, why do you think that you need this thing? Stuff like that, instead of lecturing and trying to convict, just asking questions. So the Holy Spirit convicts, the Son saves.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one. You don't want to be the savior. Some people think they want to be the savior. You don't want to be the savior.
Mm.
That's a terrible reason to get into any relationship, especially a marriage. Don't do that.
Yeah.
We call that missionary dating. The Holy Spirit convicts, the Son saves, and the Son has been given all the authority to judge. He's going to be the judge. I'm not going to be the judge. He's going to be the judge. He's a lot more just judge than I am. I don't have to worry about judging. I don't have to worry about making sure that people get what they deserve. I don't have to do any of that. I'm not the judge. And then the Father provides. And that's a tough one for us guys, is we think, if I do nothing else, I need to provide for my family.
Mm-hmm.
But everything that I have to give to my family, I got from him because he provides. And if I try to take credit for that and I try to put myself in his role, it's too much weight to carry. It's too much of a burden to bear, and it'll just stress you out and it'll be counterproductive. And so he provides. And so what's left is our job, which is love. And that's the only thing that's worth living for. And it's the only thing that's worth dying for. And what's better, right? What's more fun than having that the reason you get out of bed in the morning, and allowing that to be the reason you let go of your bad habits and allow yourself to be transformed, and allow yourself to be used in the lives of other people in a positive way. And what's better than that, right?
Dude, I don't know. That's the best, I think. And the way you put it, it's simple to understand. And that's why I love talking to you. You make things that are difficult. This is a difficult conversation. I'm sure if I was with somebody else talking the same conversation, I would be lost. But because of with you, it's very simple to understand. And that's why I'm so happy to share you with everybody. Now I say share you, but this is a friend of mine. I get to talk to him whenever I want, guys. And you're so insightful, and I love that. And you say things, I understand it, and hopefully some of the things that you say, I remember it the way you say it, and I could share that knowledge with other folks. And
I'd like to say, I was in a really dark place when the light shined into it, and I was infected by evil, and I've been healed from that and set free from that. And whatever it is that any of the listeners are going through, it's nothing compared to the love that God has for them and for all of us. And if you let him, he will set you free from it. You just have to trust him. That's it. Where else are you going to go, right?
Yeah.
We're stuck in this human condition of sin and death, and there's nothing that we can do to do anything really about either of those things. But he has the power to set us free from that, and he will do it.
Yeah.
So,
amen, dude.
What are you aiming at, right?
Right. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming in, dude. I love you, dude, and I'm so happy that that you're here. And I'm so happy I got to know you at the time that I did, and just, very happy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Folks, my friend Andrew, You know, if you guys are, struggling with anything, type it in the comments. I doubt that I doubt that you won't find an answer somewhere. Something. Just reach out there, man. The Lord's waiting for you. He wants a relationship with you, and I love my relationship with the Lord, and God has helped me so many ways. I am blessed with all of this stuff, to have this show, to be able to tell whoever is out there listening that I'm blessed with this. And you guys just look for it yourself. You'll find it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it. We'll see you again soon. See you later.